everyone. We're so glad you're here. My name is Mitali Perkins, and I'm so happy to moderate this chat with my friend Bronwyn Harris to talk about her newest book, Letters from the Inside. I sure wish we were in person at a bookstore, but we're going to make this fun, and we're going to make it as interactive as we can. Links to buy the book are in the comments. All of the proceeds after expenses go to Bronwyn's co-author Jorge and his abuelita. We're going to find out more about both of them during our time together today. Bronwyn and I share a mission to advocate for children who can be easily overlooked by those in power. She teaches them, and I write for them. So 4 years ago, I found out that Ms. Harris wanted to visit a former student who is now incarcerated. I could tell she was nervous about visiting on her own, so I offered to drive her. And that's when I first met Bronwyn's co-author, who was 20 years old at the time and had served 2 years of his 19-year sentence. We're sad that Jorge can't be here with us, but keep your eyes on his third grade class photo. When Ms. Harris was his teacher, he really still has that same engaging, cute smile. So I was honored to write the foreword to Bronwyn and Jorge's new book, Letters from the Inside, Hope in the Journey Beyond Classroom and Cell. And I'd like to kick us off by reading it to you. It's not that long. So here we go. If you need fuel to encourage educators, you're holding it in your hands, or you soon will be. This book illuminates the depth of relationship that can form between teachers and students, even in the worst case scenario, when the distressing school to prison pipeline claims yet another at-risk young person. Reading Letters from the Inside is the next best thing to joining us in person when we visit Jorge, Bronwyn's former student and co-author. It's early when we hit the road. After we greet each other, Jorge's abuela hands out homemade tamales for the 3-hour journey. We're stocked up with dollar bills for the food vending machines and have done our best to comply with dress codes to avoid problems through the security checkpoints. Along the way, we chat and laugh. Jorge's sister and fiance put headphones on or fall asleep. Abuela gazes out at the passing farms, perhaps remembering the Salvadoran village of her childhood. Bronwyn knits or naps, and I drive. Nowadays, visiting Jorge feels almost routine, but the first time we visited a few years ago, Bronwyn was nervous. Would her former student be happy to see her? Would their old connection hold strong more than a decade after it was formed? We made it through the dehumanizing security checkpoints, walked along the barbed wire under armed surveillance, and entered a more welcoming area where families and friends chatted with people on the outside. I remember the moment when Jorge entered and saw his old teacher. I'll forever associate the metaphor of a face lighting up with that encounter. He glowed at the sight of her, and her welcoming smile was just as full of joy. Since then, the connection between the two, teacher and student, has proven to be deep, dear, and unbreakable. Bronwyn writes, sends packages, keeps an eye on Jorge's family's needs, and visits regularly. I watch in amazement as she jokes, listens, encourages, and helps him set and meet goals. Practices that seem to come as naturally as breathing to an excellent educator. In turn, Jorge offers her the respect and responsiveness of a top-notch student. I invite you to read on and discover the wonder of a teacher-student bond that endured, despite the best efforts of an evil system to sever it. Sociological terms like pipelines and disheartening statistics about crime and students in urban schools don't have the last word. Love does, thank God, and always will. So now I'm so happy to raise a glass. This is sparkling water. And to toast this beautiful book. And I'm happy to introduce Bronwyn Harris. She's a fierce champion of marginalized children, a passionate educator, and a reluctant but committed author. 5 minutes before we started, she texted me, I'm never going to write another book again, which is what she texted me the last time. So Bronwyn, could you tell us a little bit about how you met Jorge?
Sure. Thank you so much, Mitali. And by the way, for all of you, Mitali is an amazing author. And if you have kids any age from very young to young adult, you should definitely check out her books. Thank you all for being here. Like Mitali said, I wish it could have been in person, but this is where we are. And at least some of you who aren't local got to come. So that's good. As Mitali mentioned, there's someone very important missing today. I mean, normally you wouldn't dream of having a book launch party without one of the authors, but it's sadly going to be years longer before he can have his freedom. So he's given permission to do this without him. He did write a heartfelt message that I will have up on a blog and email to all the attendees here in a few days about what he wants readers to know and what he wants to tell readers since he couldn't be here. So how did Jorge and I meet? And Jorge is a pseudonym. We didn't want, he has the constitutional right to publish, but we didn't want him to face any repercussions while in prison. Well, we met when I was a new teacher in East Oakland. I was in a neighborhood the police called the Killing Zone, which they did not tell me during my job interview. A friend of mine was teaching second grade and I was teaching third grade. And she told me that she had a really special student who she wanted to request to be put in my class the next year because he needed someone who would really, really care about him. And we had a really high rotation of teachers. So she wanted him to have someone who was stable at the school, who could, continue a relationship. This student had come to her once and asked her, how do I learn to be good? Other people have parents to teach them how to be good, but I don't. So how can I learn? And it was true. He didn't really have anyone to help him. His mother loved him very much, but she was really young when she had him. She already had a substance abuse problem. She had a lot of things going on in her own life. His dad was out of the picture most of the time. His grandmother was and still is just an amazing woman, wonderful presence in his life. But at that point, she wasn't his legal guardian. He was really trying to figure out how to grow up on his own. So when he came to my third grade class the following year, I learned also that he is a very special kid. He's so introspective, and he really had a sense of what was difficult in his life, which I think makes growing up in an area like this even harder. Even at ages 8 and 9, he was just fiercely protective of his family. He tried to take care of the children and the adults alike. He really took on that mantle of trying to be like the man of the house, even as a little kid. He didn't often do his homework. He had really little structure at home and not a lot of safe places, so it's understandable. But he had a sense of humor about it. One day he brought me a little sign. He was a really smart kid. I mean, just really smart. I think, if he had been born into different circumstances, we might be seeing him in an Ivy League college right now. So one day he brought me a little sign in school and it said, news flash, Jorge did his homework. And he just, laughed and laughed as he handed it to me along with his homework. So he had a really good sense of humor too.
Yeah, he's still really funny. Like when we first visited, I found out that I was exactly the same age as his abuela to the date. We have the same birthday. They started calling me Abuelita Mitali, and every time he talks, he's like, "Hey, Abuelita Mitali, you've been doing your burpees." He always burpees.
Yeah.
So, how did things change for Jorge as he grew up in East Oakland?
So I just have to say, he's been on me too. He said, you told me you want to get in better shape, so you need to do push-ups every day. So he's looking out for us. How did things change? Well, unfortunately, and this is really this is so common. As he got older, life did not get any easier for him and did not get any kinder. You can read more in my first book, which is called Literally Unbelievable, Stories from an East Oakland Classroom. And that's the one I wrote about my time teaching there. And he has a chapter just for him. And when he was 13, tragedy struck. His best friend was murdered in front of him as they were walking home. I go into detail in the other book there, but the trauma and then some other questionable decisions. I mean, any 13-year-old who's undergoing trauma is not going to make great decisions. They led to him joining a gang, and then he drove a car where another gang member was shooting at people, including a police officer. Thankfully, no one was physically hurt, but Jorge was locked up, and all this happened just a few months after he turned 18, so he was tried as an adult.
So how did you find out that he was incarcerated?
Well, we got back in touch after my first book was published. So let me read a little to tell you what happened. Okay, in my previous book, I checked in on most of my former students when I was telling their stories, making sure they were comfortable with what I wrote about them. But when it came to Jorge, whose story is the subject of chapter 10 in Literally Unbelievable, I didn't know how to contact him. So I ran a Google search. Fortunately, he has a fairly unique last name. Again, this is a pseudonym, so it was easy to find him. What I found broke my heart, but it didn't entirely surprise me. Jorge had been arrested along with another gang member shortly after he turned 18 for shooting at Oakland police officers. A reporter friend checked into the story for me and found that Jorge was at a well-known California prison and provided me with a phone number so I could try contacting them and figuring out how to write to him. When I called, it turned out I didn't have all the required information needed to get his prisoner number. The board employee on the other line was about to hang up, and then I said, please. He was my third grade student. There was a long pause, and then she offered her help. She offered to look him up for me in a roundabout way, even though she wasn't supposed to. I got Jorge's prisoner number and wrote him a letter. It took a while as I wasn't sure what to say. I struggled, and I finally came to the conclusion that what I wrote was much less important than the fact that I wrote it all. Jorge was quick to write back, and we began to exchange letters frequently. I started out thinking we might write once in a while, but before long, our correspondence became almost weekly. This was not the only assumption on my part that I had to quickly dismiss. Initially, I thought I'd be dispensing advice and care in a one-sided manner, continuing to act as a mentor to Jorge as I had when he was a boy. On the contrary, the care and concern went both ways. Jorge was eager to learn all about my life these days and keep track of how I was doing. He thanked me for what I'd done for him and his family over the year, and he offered his prayers and thoughts as well as future help in whatever I needed. Our shared history made it possible for us to reconnect in a deeply meaningful way.
That's beautiful, Bronwyn. And it's so true. It's deeply meaningful. I remember when you first saw him, it was maestra, and abuelita, and all of the family was just so respectful, and because you were the maestra, so you really earned that badge. There have been some ups and downs in the times while we visited him, and in your correspondence with him and your care for them. What has been a darkest moment for you when it comes to sustaining hope for this beloved student of yours through the years?
Yeah, as you know, there's been a few. I think one of them is probably when he was sent to a different prison a few years back. So he's been in 3 so far. And this third one is much further from his family. This prison, I'm not specifying in any of the prisons in order to keep him anonymous. But this one he's in now had much stricter regulations for visiting. You've been with me, it's like the TSA, but so much more. You feel dehumanized just going in to visit. And when we brought his sister for the first time, you remember, there was just this little tiny mistake in the guardianship papers that a social worker had overlooked that meant that she couldn't get in to visit him. So she had driven, 3.5 hours, and she had to go wait in that visitor's trailer.
That was so bad. It was heartbreaking telling her she couldn't go, and she sat in that trailer and just wept. It was awful.
And I think, remember those guardianship papers, it was something like the social worker had signed in the wrong place. It was no fault of the family at all. It was also just harder for them to find rides to the prison. And his GED process had stalled. He was on a waiting list. So I think he felt a lot of despair and helplessness at that point. But I haven't.
Wasn't he also kind of down about his mom, and all that?
He really was. His mom had died in a fire shortly after he was incarcerated. And he really, really was missing her. So I have his own words. Since he can't be here, let me read you what he says about other dark moments. So this is from a letter in July 2016, which is right after we started writing to each other. And he says, this is from one of our letters in the book. Life is unfair. It seems like right after we lost contact, I started making bad decisions. I joined a gang, started using guns for what reason, I don't know, but I regret everything. I'm just happy none of my brothers chose my path, The sad thing is my mom just passed away on December 28th last year in a house fire. That really messed me up, but she's up there with God now in a better place. So thankfully, he's doing a lot better now. He often encourages me, which is really a testament to his wonderful character.
That's for sure. Same with me. I think it was he had his grandmother hosted the at her home this festival to remember her daughter, and you went the first year. I couldn't go, but I think it was when I went with you the second year that he finally really began to trust me. It was when we
Yeah,
went together to honor and remember his mom,
I
and
think so too.
yeah. Well, we've had some downs, as you said, but you've also had some ups and some really fun, surprising moments while we visited that have been um, just just really encouraging too. So let's talk about the visits. I mean, we've gone, I don't know how many times now. This year we haven't been able to go because of the COVID, but I'm dying.
In January, and then we were planning to go in April, and of course,
Easter, around Easter, and
yeah,
around
yeah.
grandma's birthday. So we go and we show up, and we're not even sure if we're going to get in. One time we went, there was a lockdown, right? We drove all the way there, and there was a lockdown, and
Yeah, they say that can happen.
so let's talk about the visits, though. What have been some of the moments that will stand out for you in your memory as we've gone?
Oh, well, I've definitely gotten to know his grandmother a lot better, and she trusts me now. And I could tell because there was one, I don't know if you remember this. Oh, you know what? This was the time you had to go change your shirt. So for people,
I had some logo or something. I had to go borrow this horrible big black shirt that somebody else had left behind in the trailer. That was fun.
Yeah, they have a very strict and very, very confusing dress code. And I think we've all been dinged by it at some point. And then you have to go borrow somebody's lost and found.
Oh, that was because I was wearing layers and they said it's see-through. I'm like, I'm 100 years old. I don't wear see-through clothes.
And it wasn't see-through at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so that time when you went and I was just there talking to his grandmother, and she made a comment. She said the prison guards, we're talking Spanish, but she said the prison guards treat you better. And then they treat Mitali okay because she speaks English. And then for me, it's different. She only speaks Spanish. And I said, and she said it like she was very nervous. She said it very quietly. She wasn't sure what I'd say. It was very obvious she wasn't sure what I'd say. And I said, yeah, I think that's true. And then she took this deep breath and she said, es pura racismo, like it's just all racism. And I said, most things, and we talked about how American society, a lot of things are racist. And she just had this, like, she relaxed with me after that. Like, I don't know, she could trust me somehow. And then
brought it into the light, I think.
The
privilege was brought into the light.
Yeah, I think so. And me admitting that somehow did something for her, and it's changed our relationship. Now we talk every once in a while. I call her. She's having a hard time during the pandemic. She's been out of work for 6 months, and who knows when she can go back to work. But
it's complicated because she can't read or write, right? And so that makes it complicated. And so you've had to do a lot of like groundwork, paperwork, and we did get the guardianship papers. We went together. We remembered, and we got those guardianship papers, so we were able to get her or his sister a legitimate paperwork to get in. And remember the first time they saw each other? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. It was amazing because, and the thing that stands out to me was then they got up to go to the vending machine. Do you remember this? And they just started bickering like a sister and brother would, just sort of like slightly shoving each other. And I want this. No, that's gross. And he'd say, why do you have those fake eyelashes? And why are your nails too long? But it was all like with love. And, it was just the kind of thing that any siblings would have done. It felt like for a minute, it felt like we weren't in prison.
Yes, exactly. That room is kind of magical because you get through all the surveillance and dehumanizing, and then you walk into this room and they're just families in that room. I always feel like it's a place of so much love. There's parents, looking just at the faces of their kids, and then there's sweethearts looking into each other's eyes, and then there's brothers and sisters like Jorge and his sister, and they're squabbling over Cheetos, and it just feels like there's like little kids are running around and just jumping on their dads, and that's always feels like a place where I know God is present because love is present in that room. So they really reconnected, and it was wonderful to see. So then there was a time we almost couldn't get her in. Remember that?
Oh, was that the belly button ring? So, Jorge's sister had pierced her belly button, and none of us really realized that until we pulled into the parking lot, and his grandma said, you need to take that out there because they let you wear a wedding ring inside. But nothing else really. They don't let you go in with nose piercings. They don't, nothing. And so she tried to take it out and she couldn't get it out. And we all took turns trying to get it out. And she was in pain. You know, we were hurting her and we couldn't get it out.
She's
and
laying she's in the backseat of the car and we're taking turns to try to get her belly button ring out. She's, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then finally her grandma said, and I have to say this about her grandma, is that their grandma, she never had the opportunity to learn to read or write. She grew up in the countryside in El Salvador. You know, she has her own story. She doesn't speak English, and she can't read or write her name, but she is a very intelligent woman. And you can tell that by the fact that she has navigated the legal system on green card, on Jorge's trial, on guardianship, and she's done all that without speaking English and without reading or writing. I mean, she's amazing. But anyway, so I just have to say that
she's so fierce. Yeah, she's fierce and loving, and she's loyal, and she never gives up on those grandchildren. It is amazing.
She does not. So she was not about to let her granddaughter go back to that visitor's trailer. So she said, fold your pants over a couple times onto the belly button ring, and then it won't set off the metal detector. And it worked.
Yeah. One more quick story I want you to share before we go back into the book and the details of the book. One time I think we drove 7 hours just so that we could transport some shoes.
Oh, I love this story. I love it. It's just the perfect, like, right place, right time. So, you know, it's a 7-hour round trip. It's a long trip. And Mitali does the driving, which is amazing. I pick up grandma and sister. We go to somewhere close to Mitali, and Mitali drives the whole time. And I mean, it's the biggest blessing ever. So we drove 3.5 hours there. And what we usually do is Mitali and I go in and see Jorge also. And then we leave maybe halfway through or an hour into it so that he can have time with his family, his fiance, his grandma, and his sister if she comes. So we have also made the acquaintance of one of his old cellmates who doesn't get any visitors at all, ever.
22 years, never had a visitor.
No, and now he's terminally ill with lung cancer, very lonely, he's worked through all his demons, it seems like. He's really made a huge change in his life. So we went to go visit him afterwards. And we were standing in line, and we were chatting with this woman who had driven, I think she had driven like 8 hours maybe. I don't know.
From Riverside.
Riverside. She had driven up a long ways. And she said, this is the first time I'll see my son in 5 years. So we're just talking a little, and she was obviously nervous and she was pretty withdrawn. And, we were excited for her to be able to see her son. I don't know what the story is, why they hadn't seen each other in so long. And when it was her turn, the guards, they sent her through the metal detector and everything. And they looked at her shoes and they said, you can't go in. And she said, why? And they said, your shoes look like the guards' shoes. She had sort of knockoff combat boots, maybe like the Target version of combat boots. And she didn't argue. She was just sort of beaten down. She just went, okay. And you could see her kind of hang her head. And I said, wait a minute. I said, what size shoe do you wear? And she said, 8.5. Why? And I said, I wear size 9. Wear my shoes. And she said, well, then you can't get in. And I said, well, you're going to see your son. This other person, my friend Mitali, can still go visit him. But so we traded shoes. And one of the guards said, you can't do that. And I said, why not? And he didn't have an answer. So we traded shoes. The guards were not happy. But she went in with my shoes. I got these knockoff combat boots that were a little too small. And so I went out to wait in the car because there's no waiting area. You have to wait in the car.
Hobbled out to the car.
Yeah. So I hobbled back to the car. And as I did, the guard, as I'm walking out, he said, you've seen the last of your shoes. You're never getting those back. And I said, if that's true, it was worth it. So I went back to the car, and when visiting hours were up, I went back to the door, and sure enough, she was there. She traded me shoes back. She didn't really say anything, except she said, I got to see him.
Yeah.
So I felt like that whole trip was so she could borrow my shoes.
Every time we go, I mean, that was a big one, but every time we go, there's something like that. There's someone who, we get to see, or even sometimes we talk to the guards, and it's kind of amazing. It feels like the ways are prepared beforehand for us and always kind of see what's going to happen. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what's been surprising for you as you've gotten to know them better as adults now. What has surprised you about the Jorge the adult?
Well, some things I already knew about him were reinforced. And I last saw him before the prison visit. I last saw him probably at maybe his lowest spot, where he had just started with substances, and he had just seen his friend killed, and he was, joining the gang. And so then fast forward, I think 7 years before I saw him again. And some things I knew about him were strongly reinforced. He's a very caring, helpful person at his heart. Like his old cellmate who we go visit sometimes, when he found out that his cellie, he calls them, had never had visitors, he asked us to write to him and visit him. So he thinks about other people. Another story, a couple of years ago when he found out that I had to move, it was just across town, but I was telling him it's a pain to move, it's expensive. And he was worried for me. And he said, and this is a quote, he said, "I bet most likely you're going to have to pay more money for a place to live, and that sucks." So he's got the Bay Area summed up, And then later when I was moving, he said, "I hope the move went smooth and that you had enough help. I wish I could have been there to help. When I get out, I'll always help you." So that's the true Jorge. That's him. This is who he is when he's not literally trying to stay alive, when he's not in the middle of trauma, when he's not falling into these choices because life was so, so hard. And this is really why I wanted to collaborate with him and show you all what this one person who's incarcerated is really like.
Yeah, it's amazing to see, I don't know if any of you guys seen The Danger of a Single Story, by that famous TED Talk by Chimamanda Adichie, but I kind of use it as a verb now, single storying. And often when I think I did that before I met him. He's incarcerated, right? Oh, so that's his single story. But then he's, like you said, he's your student. He's become a man. And, he talks about his sister. Like, he's so protective. He's like, "Who are you dating? You dating anyone?"
Right.
Who's he's really protective of her. So, and he adores you too, Bron. It's so clear, just even every time we go, his face just lights up. Let's think though about the situation today. Your heart is still with children, I know. So what fuels your hope for at-risk third graders who are growing up in East Oakland today? Can we make a difference in their lives so that they don't end up incarcerated?
Yes, we can. And I think the first step is we have to realize there's a problem. There's a huge inequity. There's educational inequity. There's childhood poverty. There's an inequity in health care, just everything. And of course, it's just getting worse with the pandemic. So we have to realize that. And that's why I wrote the first book, was just, look what's going on. We can't pretend this isn't going on. This is going on just a few miles from where I sit right now in a very safe, calm house. And in terms of helping kids, it's all about relationships. It absolutely is. This is why, if any of you've noticed the Children Rising logo, I asked the team at Children Rising to work with me on this event because, and some of you have heard me talk about this before if you follow me on social media or anything, it is an incredibly effective organization. It pairs up kids one-on-one with a tutor, and the tutors really become mentors. In fact, when I told Jorge about it, he said if he had had this kind of person helping him, someone who is not paid to help and is not related to him, but showed up week after week, he said it could have made the difference in keeping him out of prison. So it's a very simple thing to do. It's a very simple solution, showing up for a kid regularly. It's not easy because we have to find someone to do it. And of course, we have to do it digitally for the near future, which just makes things extra hard. But so Children Rising, the sponsor for this event, has been rallying the community to come alongside children since 2001, which was my second year of teaching. And I remember when they started. Last year, they had 175 trained and coached community volunteers providing one-on-one tutoring to 450 kids. The tutors show up every week for the same child, and they really make these important personal relationships. Now, a lot of people will think, oh, that's great. You can help the kid learn to read. And as a teacher who's seen this, it doesn't just help them academically. That's essential, but it doesn't just help that. It also provides confidence, an improved sense of self-worth. It stops kids from being disenfranchised, and we have to do that early. And this sounds dramatic, but this can literally make the difference down the line between prison or freedom, and even between life and death. Getting kids really into a community and bought into school can make this huge difference.
I'm such a fan of Children Rising. I've seen that it has made such a difference in so many kids' lives. I'm so grateful that they're here in the Bay Area. Um, so now Jorge is looking towards his future. You know, we've talked about his past, and now he's thinking about his future. And I think there was a question that popped up: how long is he going to be in? And so, what are his plans for the future, Bronwyn?
Well, to answer that question specifically, it looks like 8 more years. It was supposed to be more, but overcrowding. And then once he gets his GED, that'll knock some time off. And there's some deal where because they can't have visits, they're all getting a little bit of time knocked off. I'm not sure. So it looks like 8 more years.
Wow, that's amazing.
But
Yeah.
let me tell you in his own words what his plans are, okay?
Yes.
So this is at the very end of the book, and it might be the most important part of the book. So when you read it, don't skip the afterword. I think it is probably the most important. Plans for when I first get out will be to stay out of trouble and to find a good, stable job and just spend time with my family. I stay out of trouble because when I first get out, I'll be on parole. So I'll have to be doing really good in order to get off parole early. I want to get off that as soon as possible. Once I get off of parole, I'll be able to fully focus on my life and live in peace. And that's just stopping for a second to say that peace really seems to be a theme. That's what he's looking for, peace and family. One of the hopes I have for myself when I'm out is to get myself into doing some type of career. Some of the things I'm interested in are welding, electrical, or construction, things like that. When I got locked up and sentenced to 19 years, I felt as if my life was over. I didn't care about anything. During this time, I lost my mother in a fire, so I was just hurt and going through a lot of pain. I was at the lowest point of my life. But after a few years of being incarcerated, I healed a bit from losing my mom and just told myself I was going to do everything and anything to come home and to better myself as a person. That's why I'm taking advantage of all the good things being offered to me right now. Another thing I'm happy and grateful for is my beautiful fiance, Joanna. She walked back into my life in February 2019. We went to elementary school together. We never really talked then. It was always just hi and bye. We saw each other when we got older a few times because she used to hang with my brother here and there. For some reason, though, it always felt like there was something that drew me to her. She was always on my mind.
That has been really amazing to watch them fall in love. I remember when we drove her there. She was in the back seat, and we were driving to the middle of nowhere, and there were this billboard for these houses with these little families, and they were all Latinx families, and I caught her eye, and then later on I asked her, "So were you thinking about that for you guys?" And she said, "How did you know?"
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's so clear. They both have stars in their eyes. And, you watch the couples in that waiting room, and I have to tell you, Bronwyn, there's times when it gets kind of steamy in there, don't you think? I mean, they can't do anything but just an initial hug and a kiss, but they just gaze at each other with such love. And Jorge and his fiancée are no different. They walk over to the vending machine, and they're holding hands, and it's like watching them go on a date. Like, it's really sweet. So I know his fiance is probably watching, and I know, I'm the abuelita, so I can embarrass them. So I have to ask if they do get married. My husband's a pastor. I offered that they could get married right there. I offered his services. But if they get married, can they enjoy time together while he's incarcerated?
So there is this thing called family visits. And Jorge was actually trying to work it out with his grandma before the pandemic, which shut down all visiting completely. So immediate family members can be together for a weekend and even cook for a taste of home. So I'm sure if he got married, they could probably do that. And I don't know, there might be some paperwork to jump through, but and I have to say about her, if she is listening too, she knows what she's getting into. She is a very sensible person who is just in love with this person, and she knows what's going to be hard, and she knows the pros and cons. And I've been really impressed with her. She's more mature than a lot of people who are much older than her.
Yeah, it's the real thing, and it's really fun. I don't know, I just can't help teasing them every single time, sort of like, when's the date? When can I bring my husband? Let's make this happen. And they get embarrassed. It's fun. So I'm just so happy, Bronwyn. I'm so proud of you, and I just want to lift my glass to say congratulations to you for this book was, it's from your heart, and it's a beautiful book. And I just know you guys who are listening are going to love getting to know Jorge better, and just seeing their correspondence is just going to thrill you. So you're ready. You can order it at any time, and we're happy to take your questions too. So you can I see some of you guys are leaving them in the chat. So thanks for coming, and we're ready for your questions now.
Should we thank the people who helped on this first, or do you want to do that after the questions?
Let's do a couple questions first. I see a question here. Were the letters in English or were they translated from Spanish?
Oh, that's a great question. So Jorge is completely bilingual. I don't know how good his writing skills in Spanish are because I taught him in English, but his grandmother only speaks Spanish. So we wrote back and forth in English. But when we're there, a lot of times, the conversation and we talked about this, he learned the term code switching. And so the conversation will just go back and forth, Spanish, English, depending on if it's something that grandma wants to be included in or not. Yeah, but he's totally bilingual.
Okay. And then is the book only available on Amazon? And how can people order it? So talk a little bit about that.
So a lot of local bookstores are not taking consignments right now because of the pandemic, but Books Inc. in Alameda is. So this weekend, I'll get some copies to Books Inc. in Alameda if you're there. You can also send me a message and order a signed one if you would like. And then it's available on paperback and Kindle form on Amazon. And like we said before, all the proceeds go to his family.
Right. So if someone's wondering how they can help Jorge now. Oh, I wanted to show, here are the letters. I wanted to show you guys this. These are the letters that I have received from Jorge Celi through the time. And this is he's written out his whole life story.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing. So you can always write somebody who is incarcerated. It is a huge blessing to them. But how else can people help Jorge and even his Celi?
Well, buying the book is definitely going to help because the proceeds go to his family. So his real concern, he would like some money to buy things at the commissary and prison, but his real concern is to help his fiance and his grandmother. And like we've mentioned, his grandmother's been out of work. Who knows when she'll be able to go back to work? She's a house cleaner. And we had a long talk the other day. She's, it's a very hard thing. We all think that not working would be great until we don't work, and then it can be very depressing. And the people she cleans houses for are mostly frail, elderly people. So they've just all put it on hold for the time being. So I have started a GoFundMe for his family. That will be, it'll be on this Facebook page. So if you have a Facebook account, you can like this page and you'll find it. It's also, if you signed up through Eventbrite, you will get an email with the GoFundMe soon, maybe early next week. So you can definitely help that way. And then also just spreading the word, and kind of pushing people to look beyond stereotypes that, the stereotypes we have of prisoners, the stereotypes we have of gang members or former gang members, understanding that these people were all children once. And in a lot of cases, they really this is not what they wanted to happen, but trauma happened.
Yeah, it's, didn't he read Tattoos on the Heart? Didn't you give one of the?
That was the first book I sent him. So one of the things, when Jorge said that he wanted to better himself, he's not kidding. He keeps asking me for books, and it's, it's tricky. You can only send paperback books. You can only send them from Amazon. So at first I sort of picked some books I thought he might like. Tattoos on the Heart is a great one. And then he started asking me, I want to learn about Cesar Chavez. I want to learn about space and stars. I want a good mystery, to help me escape. And so he's been reading a lot.
Yeah, he loved the Harry Potter books, I think.
He loved the Harry Potter books, yeah.
Yeah, so people are asking how they can get assigned, your hordes of fans. And I have to have a shout out here to the Harris women who are listening. You must be so proud. What a legacy of strong women in your family. Your grandmother, shout out to Bronwyn's grandmother and her mother and her sister, and just there's strong Harris women everywhere, and we're so happy for that. So
I think most of my family's watching right now.
How can people get a signed copy? People want
to. Yeah, signed copy. You've got to contact me. So either on my website, bronwynharris.com, there's a contact button, and you can also just send me a message through this Facebook page, and then we can talk about if I need to mail you a signed copy or if you're local and want to pick it up.
Yeah, will the books be available in Spanish? Someone wants to know.
Not unless I find someone who would like to help me translate it. I don't trust my Spanish quite well enough, and I would lose his voice, I think, so I would need a real translator. So we'll see.
Your Spanish is pretty good. And, you know, when we're driving, I think, sí, yo puedo hablar español, but I can't. It's terrible. So, another question is, can people help him get released early? And again, when will he be released? So
I wish. So it looks like about 8 years. And I did have a friend who paid a lawyer to look through his whole file and see if there's anything that's missed. And we can't. He it was originally supposed to be a much longer sentence. He did take a deal. And because of the gang affiliation and the gun enhancement, they didn't take into account trauma. They didn't take into account that he was barely 18. There's a lot that needs to be redone with the prison system. It's very punitive. It's not at all rehabilitative. When we go in, we see some of the things say, Department of Correction Rehabilitation. There's no rehabilitation. So, we can fight for prison reform, but we unfortunately cannot help this one person get released early. What you can do is in 8 years, when he's out, we need to rally around him. We need to help with funds. We need to, help him find jobs. It's very hard for people who have had a felony to find a job. So, keep following the news with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully he's really excited about his electrician thing. So I keep saying to my husband, wait on the electrical work. We'll have
8 years. Wait 8 years.
Yeah. Right. So people want to know what's an appropriate age to read the book?
That's a good question. I think it depends on how honest you are with your kids about inequality and what leads people to violence, and things like, trauma, parent dying, watching a friend die. There's nothing explicit. There's no, there's no real description of like when his friend died. There's absolutely nothing explicit. Mystery novels I read are a lot more violent, but it's just that I would read it. I'd say if you're Mitali, you can tell me what you think too, because you're an actual children's author. But my guess is maybe if your child is middle school or younger, I would read with them or read at the same time as them and discuss. Because inequality is a really hard topic. Kids want things to be fair. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think at that middle school age, it probably depends on the child. Like 8th grade could handle it if it's a child that's ready. But yeah, reading with your kids is always great. Read it aloud with them over dinner, family, and watch. Just learn together about. It's a great chance to learn during this. We think we're locked up during the pandemic. I'm thinking about Jorge and his cellie and the other guys that we see where it's so hot in Central California. I mean, when we go there, we're just drenched in sweat when we come out. Yeah. And then think of the smoke from the fires and everything in that place, plus the COVID. So I think it will really help your family gain perspective on some of the things that we're all whinging about or whining about when you read this, and just remember those in prison. We're called to remember those in prison. So it's a great way to do it as a family.
Yeah. And I've talked to him about that when, COVID started and a lot of people said, oh, I feel like I'm in prison. I feel like I'm locked up. And he said, I wish people wouldn't say that. I can understand. But then, and he's just a wonderful person, because then he pivoted and he said, but I can understand. It's really hard. And if people don't really know what it's like to be locked up, of course they're feeling bad. They can't see their extended family. And he ended up just having so much compassion. And I was surprised because I felt like, how dare you say this is like prison? This isn't like prison. I've been to prison. I've visited prison. Prison's horrible, even as a visitor. And it is. But he just ended up with so much compassion. And he kept saying, and how are you doing, Bronwyn? I finally got him to stop calling me Ms. Harris. He's 24, I think, in prison. And he's still calling me Ms. Harris. I said, we can do first names now if you want. And he said, well, I feel bad for you, Bronwyn, because you live by yourself. Like, isn't this hard? Can you see your family? I mean, he just, turned it around. And COVID is not like being incarcerated. He told me once, he said, I haven't had McDonald's in 6 years. Imagine just like literally not being able to eat McDonald's, be able to make choices for yourself. This is not Jorge that said it, but someone was telling me that they know someone who's incarcerated. And when he got out, he had this habit of just waiting in front of doors because they're not allowed to open doors for themselves. They have to wait for them to be unlocked and opened. So it took him a really long time to just learn again that he could open a door for himself. So, you know, it does give us some, I mean, this pandemic is tough, but it does give us some perspective. And I hope that the fact that he cares about how we're suffering really offers some insight into who this person is.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's so true. People want to know how long it took to write the book. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you first, my first book took me 10 years. And that is because of stories like Jorge's that were just so hard that I kept, and my first book you can still buy. You can buy from me if you want a signed copy, send me a message, or you can buy off Amazon. Books Inc. might still have a few copies, but you know, they go together well. I think it gives you more context. But my first book took me so long because of all these really hard stories that I would, you know, write for a while, and then I would look into what happened to that child, and then I would find out, oh, they went to prison, and I would have to put this back. You know, I found out one of my former students died horribly. He has a chapter 11 in the book, I think, you know, so that took me 10 years. So when we started this, and it was Mitali's idea. Everyone needs to know that Mitali gets credit for this because he wanted.
That's why she was mad at me when she was.
I know, it's true. I didn't want to write another book.
Got me into this. No.
So on one of our trips, I said, you know, he really wants to write the story of his life, but, you know, it's going to take a while because we're doing all this by snail mail. And Mitali said, why don't you publish the letters you've been writing? And it was like, well, how did we not think of this? So the letters are from 2016 to 2019. Obviously, we're still writing, but that was when we cut it off. The introduction probably took, I mean, it's not very long. It probably took me 6 months because I wanted it to be perfect. You know, if I'm speaking on behalf of someone else, it needs to do them justice. And then his afterword, it took him a really long time to get started. And I think that was just confidence. I mean, he dropped out in 9th grade-ish, but he really stopped paying attention to school in 5th grade. And he's a smart kid, but, you know, he had never written anything really. And he hadn't even read that much. But when he sent the afterword, so we agreed that I'd write the introduction, he'd write the afterword, in the middle would be the books. When he wrote the afterword, I sent it to my editor and she said, this is amazing. She said, I'm changing less on his than I'm changing in yours. And I have a college degree, you know, I have a teaching credential. So it took him a really long time to get started. But then once he did, it was, you know, just a couple weeks.
Yeah, and hats off to you as 3rd grade teacher because he has perfect penmanship.
He does. He's always
just like
handwriting.
They're typed, you know, it's amazing. So
oh, and if you get the book, the cover of it, so shout out to the cover artist whose name is Erin Larson. And the background of the book here is one of his letters. So you can actually see his handwriting.
Right. I know Erin's on the chat. She's been commenting and stuff. We're loving seeing your comments, you guys. Keep the questions and comments coming. It's so interesting to see how you guys are responding. Some of you are Bronwyn's friends on Twitter. Some of you are family. Some of you are friends. And it's just, it's great that we're all here together to celebrate this young man and his hope for the future. And so let's see. If there are any other questions here. Oh, your student Luke wants you to know what.
If that's the Luke, I think if that's the Luke, I think he's my brother's friend. Hi, Luke.
Okay, and
Luke, but yeah.
Said you are a great teacher. They wanted everyone to know what a good teacher you are. So.
Oh, that's a different Luke. Hi, Luke.
Yeah.
Luke has been writing amazing things lately.
Right. I just love being like on the Bronwyn train. It's just so fun. It's like holding on like to the Bronwyn train. You guys are part of the Bronwyn train now. It's gonna take you places. It's gonna take you places you never dreamed of. You're gonna end up walking through high security prisons if you're not careful. The Bronwyn train takes you places. So, but yeah. we want to encourage you guys to take that first step if you can in your own lives. Like to take that risk toward the margins, and just to remember people who are incarcerated, and you know, if you have someone in your life even at a distance, write the letter. And yeah, it's just didn't your dad just write his first letter to?
He wrote to, and I have to say, my parents were not thrilled when I started writing to a prisoner. They were nervous. They know we have a family friend who is a prison guard at San Quentin. They've heard stories. They were nervous. And after they read this book, they both texted me and said, wow, he's so smart. He's so caring. Can we write to him? And my dad decided to write to Jorge's old cellie, who is, what is he, about 60, late 50s, and totally lonely. So he just wrote to him too.
Right, and I think your parents just celebrated 40-some years of marriage, and I was telling Bronwyn
48 years of marriage. Yes.
Yeah, I was telling Bronwyn that writing a letter to Jorge's cellie probably made his mom all like fan her face. That. So anyway, do you talk to Jorge on the phone? Someone wants to know.
I don't, because it's so expensive. I don't remember exactly how expensive it is, but I know his fiance and his grandmother talk to him on the phone, and it adds up so fast. And there's been articles about like the price gouging and how much it costs prisoners to talk on the phone. It's ridiculous, and it needs to change. So that I don't talk to him on the phone mostly because I can't afford it. I write him letters, and now there's a special email, which also costs money, but they're trying to make money off prisoners any way they can. So we email and we write snail mail.
Yeah, I know. A couple of times we've been trying to take his abuelita out to different. She's never tasted anything but Mexican or El Salvadoran food. So we had this bright idea of taking her to go eat Indian food because that's my heritage. So we took her to this dosa place. It was so spicy. She thought it was spicy, but she was
really spicy. Yeah.
But in the middle of that time, she got a call from him, and she always takes his call. It doesn't matter how much it costs. That's happened a couple of times when we've been with her. He calls, she says, con permiso, and she takes the call. She takes his call. It doesn't matter how much it costs, or he's her boy, and she's going to take the call.
Exactly. Yeah. She raised him. She wasn't his legal guardian, but she raised him, and she loves her. She loves those grandkids so much. Right.
But she's strict. She's strict. A couple times I've seen her, really, and they obey her. They just really obey. She's tiny, and she's just half my size, but she rules the household. Yeah. Good to see her. Yeah. So let's see. Can people visit Jorge with you?
So, the visits are limited to, what is it? Is it 4 people? I think 4 or 5. And so, it's hard because we would already have to, sorry, something's occurring. It's hard because we would have to have room in the visit. And as far as visiting him, they would have to write to him and ask him because he has to fill out the paperwork. So the best thing to do if you want to contact him at all about sending money, visiting, and he's not close. I'm not going to tell you what prison he's at publicly, but like we said, it's about 3.5 hour drive. And so the best thing is to just contact me either through my website or through the Facebook Messenger, and I can tell you how to help. Yeah, how to visit, how to write, how to send money. And again, we're going to do that GoFundMe.
Yeah, I know there are chaplaincy programs too that could set you up to visit people as well. Mm-hmm. This time we drove out because there was a closer prison that he was at first, and then we went to the farther one, and everyone was asleep in the car, and the GPS was taking me. I was driving along, and I was singing my worship songs, and I missed the dang exit.
I remember that.
So badly, and it was like 27 miles to the next exit.
Once you miss the first exit, that's it. I don't know how we got there on time.
It was a miracle. And then the number of times you called when we were trying to figure out the system to get in, I think it was one time you called 87 times or something like that.
So there are so many reasons we need prison reform. And I have emailed my representative, this is a California prison. It's not national, but we need prisoner reform on a national level. But please talk to your representative. It is so when we first started visiting, the only way to sign up to visit was to call. And you had to call on a Tuesday between 7 and 10 a.m. And that was it. That was the only time you could call. So, first of all, if you're an hourly worker who's working between those times, you just can't. And you can show up for an unscheduled visit, but only in certain times. And you run the risk of them saying, no, the visiting room is full. So I called, and I have a screenshot of it on my phone. That first time I called 77 times because it was busy. I just hit redial. I woke up early. I just hit redial 77 times. The second
That's
time
biblical. That's like 77 times is such a good biblical number, Bronwyn.
Yes, exactly. And the second time was 80 something. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then I learned that there is an online system, but you have to do it. I think it opens Sundays at 8 p.m. and you can schedule 2 weeks out. And so if you wait at all, like if you wait till Monday, then you're probably not going to get it. So then I started doing the online system, which again, doesn't work if you don't read or write, if you don't have internet. I mean, this is just there's so many barriers set up. And so if you remember, the one time I set it up and then they messed it up. I had a confirmation for one time and then they sent me a confirmation for another time. And so I tried to call. I got up on Tuesday and I tried to calling. And I finally got through to someone. She said, all we do is make reservations. I can't change it. And I ended up having to call the Alameda City Council member who was at that time a staff member for Assembly Member Rob Bonta in California, and get one of Rob Bonta's staff to check for me. I mean, it's ridiculous. And if you don't have the ability or the time or the knowledge to advocate like that, you just won't see your loved one.
It was so amazing to watch you just be persistent and to hang in there with so much advocacy. It's been amazing over the last 4 years to watch how you do not give up. And I think tenacity is it's so good for me to see. And it's really something I admire. So
if my family's still on, they can vouch for the fact that I'm very stubborn.
Yes, that's it has, like all character traits, it has its bright side and it has its dark side. And I think your sister may have asked us if you ever want to teach in East Oakland again.
Oh, I'd love to. I can't afford it. So, I've looked at, if you're not in the Bay Area, I mean, my monthly rent is, if you're not in the Bay Area, my monthly rent is probably more than a mortgage on a 5-bedroom house in somewhere else. My friends in Arkansas who have I think 4-bedroom house with a giant yard pay less in mortgage than I pay for a 1-bedroom apartment with no yard. So I can't afford it. I looked at the pay scale, and even if I had never left, and I left because my health was really suffering, I could do a lot better now. I have, as an older person than I was before, I have better boundaries. I would be a better teacher. I have better ways of working with people who are not easy to work with, of supporting the administration or ignoring them as you need to. I mean, all those things were what burned me out. I could do that now, but even if I had never left, where I would be on the pay scale wouldn't be enough to live on. So a lot of teachers in the Bay Area face this. They're either living with a ton of roommates or they have a spouse who brings in money. So no, I can't go back to the classroom anytime soon.
Right. And your mom, that was your mom's question, which I think is funny as a mom. Like, did you want to go back and teach there again? And she said,
she was nervous.
No, this is a quote from your mom. Stubborn, yes, but caring. I think that's right. You're right, Joelle. She is. So you should be so proud of your girl. She is so caring.
I don't know if I've ever told my mom this, and I can say it now that I'm not teaching there anymore. So I was in the part of East Oakland right by the Coliseum. It's the highest murder rate of anywhere in Oakland. And every time something would happen that would get on the news, my dad would call, I don't know if he remembers this, and say, did that happen near your school? And I'd say, oh yeah, right across the street. And he'd say, if your mother asks, tell her it was across town. So all those things you thought were in West Oakland, Mom, they were right outside our school.
Oh no, now you're undermining all that work of him writing the Sally.
I know, right?
Now she's like, he lied. No. So anyway, there is a GoFundMe that's set up for all of you who follow Bronwyn or follow me. Will set up the link, and that money will go directly to pay rent, to support his grandma and his sister, and so that is going to be a big help to him. He's longing to do that. That's his heart's desire, is to provide for them. He sees himself as the man of the house, and he really wants to do that. So if you guys really are stirred by this, go contribute to that GoFundMe, buy the book, talk it up, and share the links, share what you've learned. And okay, we'll close with this question because I think people have been with us for a while now. So happy you guys are here. But here's a good question for me to ask you, Bronwyn. This comes not from me, I promise.
Oh, no.
When are you going to write your third book, Bron?
I'm so tired. I'm so tired. It's a lot of work. I have an idea that I started, but I don't know if it'll get done. And that is basically how you can help. So, you know, someone reads these books. Okay, how can I help? Well, the short answer is there's some categories. You make a big stink to your legislators. I mean, I'm in California. California education funding is ridiculous. I mean, it is a joke. It is not a funny joke, and we need to change that. So please, Californians, I know you have other things right now going on, but write to your legislators, write to the governor, and don't stop. Keep bugging them. You know, if you've ever seen The Shawshank Redemption, you know, the way they get a library is he just keeps writing. He never gives up. So please, funding. We need funding for trauma resources. We need funding for counseling, mental health. We need better teacher pay. I would be a much better teacher now. I can't go back. You know, so that's one. So this book I have in mind, one of them is advocating to your legislators, donating to things like Children Rising. There's some really good organizations. If you're in Oakland, Children Rising, Harbor House, you know, there's a lot of other organizations. You know, just I have an appendix in my first book that tells you. So advocating, donating, volunteering. Those are, and volunteering, Children Rising, check it out. I will post links on this Facebook page. So I wanted to write a book that basically is a how-to of how you can help. I think I need someone to help me write that book. So if anyone has the knowledge, let me know. And then the other thing, and this is just out there, is Anne Lamott is one of my favorite writers. And she wrote, she gave me a back cover blurb from my first book. So if you get my first book, you'll see an Anne Lamott quote on the back. She loved the book. But she's written tons of books that are just essays of things she thinks, you know, about different things. I would like to write a book about that one day. I don't know how to get it focused. I don't know if there's an audience for it, but I'd like to.
Ooh, you guys are witnesses. That's books 3, 4, and 5.
It's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen.
Well, we want to extend our gratitude to Children Rising for helping to organize this, and we have Jim Wambach with us, the executive director of Children Rising, and we'd like to invite him to say a few words. So here you go, Jim. Nice to see you.
Oh, well, thank you, and to Bronwyn, congratulations. You know, we've been sitting back, all of us actually, just continuing to be inspired by how effective and how much one person, one caring adult can help one child. And in this case, it's a child that is now a man. And then we've also had the opportunity here today to really look at and watch Mitali. And Mitali is another caring adult that has helped many children and many families with her books. So thank you for both. Thank you to both of you, and Bronwyn, thank you for writing this. It's been our absolute delight to be a part of this, and the need that the children have right now. It's always been profound, frankly, but it is now higher than it's ever been as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So these kids, the teachers, and the families, they need all of us in this community now more than ever. So hopefully you've been as inspired as I have been and as we all are. It's all about taking action and putting ourselves out there. So thanks for letting us join with this. It's been a wonderful event.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks so much. So there's a really handsome young man who is just really wants to say hi to Bronwyn. He says hi. He says that he loves you, Bronwyn.
Yes, Thomas. That's my wonderful nephew. So I want to say hi. I dedicated this book. Now you've got to. This is a book. Let me tell you. A lot of people skip forewords and dedications. Read every word of this. Read the dedications. Read the foreword. Everything. It's so heartfelt. So I dedicated this book to my nieces and nephew, Symphony, Thomas, and Lucille, who are hopefully watching. And they are just so kind-hearted. They care so much about other people. They care about kids and adults who don't have what they have. And this next generation is really learning compassion in a very powerful way. So, hi, Thomas. I love you too. I love you, Lucille and Symphony. It's Lucille's birthday on Saturday. And I'm so proud of these kids. And, they ask me all the time, if we see unhoused people, they say, what can we do? How can we help them? Why don't we give them houses? So, and one of them, so I have to tell you, so Thomas asked me, is your friend in prison? Is he a bad guy? Because, Thomas is 7. There's a lot of talk about bad guys. And I said, no, he's not a bad guy. He's someone who had a lot of problems and did some things wrong. And now he's really trying to make his life better. And I think that's true for so many people in prison.
Mm.
If they just have the opportunity, if they just have any kind of actual rehabilitation.
Yeah. And for me, I want to shout out to your nephew and nieces too, because I feel like they're famous from seeing them in your Facebook and they're very much heroes of your Facebook streams. So that's fun.
They're amazing people. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And Bronwyn, I want to thank you for letting me be a part of this from start to finish. It's just been such a delight and honor for me, and it's really helped me to grow in my faith, to see how you step out and serve. So thanks for that. Buy the book, you guys. Don't forget, you're gonna love it. Buy it for somebody else too. It makes a great gift. And so that's my thanks. I know you have some thanks too, Bronwyn.
Yes. So I definitely want to thank Mitali, because she just jumped on this. She said, she's a pastor's wife. And I think the conversation was, and I did not know Mitali very well. I think she said, you seem nervous. And I said, yes, I am. And she said, I'll go with you. And I said, but you don't even know him. And I think what she said was, the Bible says we're supposed to visit the prisoners, and I've never had an opportunity to. So, she's just ready to go visit prisoners in prison, which is not, the actual seeing your loved one is wonderful. The process is terrible. And Mitali does it with me every time. And
we have a good time, we have a good laugh and a good cry.
We do. It's just, it's so dehumanizing, and the guards are dehumanized, and of course I want to thank Jorge's family. His fiance has helped me a lot, getting messages back and forth. She's a wonderful person. His grandmother she is my hero. Absolutely. I have a few other people to thank. Jonathan Henke is my webmaster and very, very qualified for what I pay him, which is nothing, and has done a really good job on my website. Christine Osborne and Phil Dangler did copy editing. Julia Watson Foster did all the developmental editing, which was extremely frustrating at times for her, I'm sure, because I'm stubborn. And Aaron Larson did the cover, which is beautiful. And if we can put everyone on the screen for a second, I want to show the team that made this event happen. We've been having a bunch of meetings. So it's Children Rising people. So I don't know if we can we see everybody now? Amber's on the board of Children Rising. Jim is the executive director, and Eric is the communications person. And they have just worked so hard to make this happen. So I really, without them, it would just be a Facebook Live video with me holding up the phone like this. So.
And Amber also picked out Bronwyn's outfit. So for those of you who
she did. Amber is finishing her term serving for on the Alameda County Board of Ed, and I just can't wait to see what she does next. She's a real advocate.
Yeah, people want Jorge to know that they want a second book from him too. So, when is he going to find out about this time, and how are you going to share that with him?
So, the really sad thing is he can't see this video. He won't be able to see this video for 8 years. So hopefully his fiance will tell him all about it. I'm going to email him as soon as we're done and tell him all about it. And again, it's just everything's different when you're in prison. I had to go on Amazon and buy his own book for him to get it, because there's no other way for him to get it. So he should be getting this any day now. Of course, the Postal Service has had issues. We'll encourage him. I want him to write his life story.
Well, and with that note, we're just going to say thank you to all of you for showing up. And if you can just remember those in prison with us, it would be a delight. So God bless you all.
Thank you so much.